Have you heard of the term sanewashing? Well, journalist Parker Molloy wrote about it in the New Republic, and since then it's kind of blown up. It's this idea that when some in the media report on Donald Trump's events, speeches, or social media posts, they find a normal thing he said and put it in the headline, leaving out all the other wild things that were said around it. So basically engaging in a kind of normalcy bias where they want him to be speaking normally so badly that even if he objectively isn't, the resulting framing isn't true to what he actually said. Here's how Parker put it, quote, "As Trump's statements grow increasingly unhinged in his old age, major news outlets continue to reframe his words, presenting a dangerously misleading picture to the public." Here's an example that Parker used. Do you see this rant? Well, here's how CNN described it. Quote, "Former President Trump on Tuesday announced he has reached an agreement to participate in a September 10th debate with Vice President Kamala Harris, noting that the rules will be the same as the last CNN debate, which seemed to work out well for everyone." Here's that social post again. Do you feel CNN captured the essence and spirit of this post? This is actually part of a much bigger problem in media, where there's almost a compulsion for things to be status quo. I would argue it's actually closely linked to a similar compulsion to avoid the perception of bias over actual bias. Like, say, failing to cover the rise of far-right extremism and the disproportionate use of conspiratorial language from the right because they don't want to be seen as going too hard on one side. Even if, in so doing, they end up engaging in actual bias because they aren't covering these issues as they're actually happening. Or, in coverage of Israel and Palestine, how an analysis of major Canadian papers found that dozens of Palestinian deaths were required to merit just one mention in the publication, while there was one mention for every 2 Israelis who passed. These two sort of intertwined issues are actually a symptom of the same problem. Worrying about the perception of bias and whether you're seen as going equally hard on both sides, and feeling this drive to preserve some sense of normalcy and sanity even if there is none. These are rooted in the same fatal flaw, worrying about perception rather than the actual journalism you're putting out into the world. Whatever the motivation for this, whether it's to avoid bad faith screams of bias or to cling to your worldview at the expense of the truth, the end result is the same: that we fail in our jobs as journalists. What do you think of all this?